Hi, Weirdos! You are watching Keep It Weird, the podcast for all things strange and unusual, and this is a very special bonus episode. We are taking time away from our hiatus to bring you our review of a brand new documentary, Missing 411, the UFO Connection. You all know we love the Missing 411 documentaries, and we talk all the time about creepy missing person cases in and around our national parks. Well, this documentary takes you even further down the rabbit hole and includes all new cases that feature a brand new element. It's not a portal, it's not Bigfoot, it's aliens. And we are two alien lovers here for a good time, not a long time. My name is Ashley, and this is my co-host, Lauren.
Hello, Weirdos!
And today we're going to be telling you all about Missing 411, the UFO Connection, and whether or not we think it's worth checking out.
Yes.
I mean, the answer is yes. Here's the deal. The answer is yes.
The answer is, yeah. We're going to go ahead. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
it's
alert.
Absolutely worth checking out.
Spoiler alert. We do think it's worth checking out, but we're going to go ins and outs. This is a not fully spoiler-free review of the movie, but we're gonna try and keep it as spoiler-free as possible. We are gonna cover the details of a few cases and obviously a couple things. We're gonna discuss a couple things that they talk about in the documentary that pertains to the stuff that we talk about on the show. But I think that you could still watch this whole thing, then watch the documentary and enjoy both, right?
Yes.
Agreed. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll tiptoe around the juiciest parts if we can, but also, like, we're going to do our best. But some things we're going to want to shout from the rooftops. Yeah, we're only human. But it'll still be worth seeing. It's very,
absolutely.
It'll still be good storytelling. So tune in. Also, most importantly, we have to shout out to the hat that Ashley got me as a Christmas present.
How great is that hat,
guys? One of my favorite gifts that I've ever received. It felt perfect for this alien episode.
Hell yeah.
I just want to wear it everywhere. And I love it so much.
I'm glad you like it. I also like my new neon. Did anyone notice I have new neon? Yeah. Lauren got me that for Christmas.
She's wow, two
Christmas babies. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Two Christmas babies.
What are we here for?
What are we doing?
When do we want it? No. Okay.
No.
So, before we talk about
too much.
It's too much. Listen, we'll calm down. Let me take a sip of my Coke.
Yeah, let me calm down with some caffeine.
New year, new me. Okay, so before we talk about the actual documentary, we do need to talk about David Paulides. You have heard his name on our show before. If you've seen any of the other Missing 411 documentaries, which we'll touch on in this, you know who he is. So before researching for this episode, all I knew about David Paulides is what the Missing 411 documentaries told me. He's a retired police officer. He worked in SWAT and the street crimes unit and had a lot of experience as a detective. Now, unfortunately, none of that can be confirmed, and it has caused a little bit of contention in the paranormal community when it comes to the validity of the Missing 411 series. I've read just about every article I can find on the guy, and no one can seem to get confirmation that he worked in those fields during his time in law enforcement.
Which is wild.
It's a little wild, but also, like, I'm not like a professional researcher. Like, I research stuff for the podcast all the time. I consider myself to be pretty good at it, pretty good at like tracking down the real info. But I can't find much. I even searched like where was it? Was it San Diego? Where the hell was he? San Andreas? Is that a place? That's a game.
San Andreas, there's a San Andreas fault
San
that
Jose
I know causes earthquakes. San Jose is definitely a place up north in California.
I think it was San Jose.
Where he is?
I think that's where he was. I think that's where the police department he worked for. But I even looked at like the San Jose Times and like searched like old articles. I couldn't find anything. What I can determine is that yes, he worked in law enforcement and was working as a court liaison officer as of 1996 when he left the department. On top of this, David has some opinions and beliefs that I don't particularly agree with, some of which can fall into the conspiracy theory realm and not the fun kind, if you catch my drift. However, that being said, just because I don't agree with him politically doesn't mean I'm going to tear apart his documentary. In fact, I happen to love the Missing 411 documentaries. I think they're very well done. And I think this one might be my favorite.
I agree.
On top of everything I've said, I don't think these documentaries can necessarily be scrutinized based on what experience he does or does not have with law enforcement. And we'll kind of get to why. When it comes to attempting to debunk David's work, you have to start at the cases. Are they real? And as far as I've researched, and again, I haven't read the Missing 411 books, I'm only talking about the documentaries. Out of the documentaries, every case he covers is a real case you can research independently, which I think is awesome.
Yes, for sure.
And my takeaway from David Paulides when it comes to Missing 411 is that he is sincere. He and the people that he interviews in this documentary believe that something mysterious has happened, that these disappearances are strange. And David always seems to be extremely respectful of the people who are missing and their loved ones who he interviews. He even says in this one, in this documentary, like, how am I supposed to look these people in the eye and even suggest that there's a possibility that it could be UFOs? Like, how could I do that to them? They've been through so much. Like, the last thing they want to hear is that their loved one who's missing might have been taken by aliens. So
I so appreciated that he said that. It just showed there was an awareness. There was a self-awareness of everything that he's doing. And he, he's just reporting what he has found and what from actual evidence has been presented to him. But I think he has such a respect for the families. And that was going to be my big takeaway from not just this part of the documentary series, but the other Missing 411 docs, that everyone interviewed and David are so sincere and so genuine. They are just, they're real people telling their story. You can see the emotion, you can see and hear the emotion in their voice and just how much they believe in what has happened. They're missing their family members, but they're also talking about, I know what I saw. I understand I sound insane, but I know what I saw. It was real to me. It has changed my life. Like, there's a little bit of fear. Every part of it felt so genuine and real to me. And that does not always happen in documentaries.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm not super easily fooled when it comes to testimonials, if you will. These people did seem really genuine. And that was one of the complaints, I did a lot of digging on Missing 411 and David Paulides while researching for this episode. And, like I said, a lot of people point to his political beliefs, some of the other things he believes in, not being able to get confirmation totally on his career. And they use those things to try and, like, devalue, I guess, what he's doing and the information he brings to the table. But I did just want to kind of get that out of the way before we talked about how we felt about this particular documentary, just that we understand that many people have many different opinions about David Paulides, about his past, politics, beliefs, and, like, I do too, for sure. I've read some stuff I don't really like, but I don't think it has any bearing on
my favorite man in the world.
Exactly. But I think that the information and the content provided are compelling, and that's kind of what matters to me in a piece of nonfiction.
For sure.
Nothing seems to be majorly exaggerated.
Right.
All he's saying is, ain't this weird?
All that you want. But exactly. It's like, you can tear apart his past, you can look into his career, and that's all fine if you want to do the research and say, like, I need to know about this guy, whatever. But everything that he's presenting is separate from that, in my opinion. He's just presenting it in a good way, in a very watchable, again, genuine documentary, where he's just showing us this video and these interviews, these all real cases, as Ashley said, and saying, this is bizarre. Should we look into this a little bit more? Did anyone know
concerned
this was going on? Totally.
this is the third Missing 411 documentary. As I said before, there was Missing 411, which focused on, I think, mostly children going missing in and around national parks. There's Missing 411, The Hunted. Yeah, the first one was hard. Missing 411, The Hunted, which featured hunters, like grown, I think mostly men, if not all men, but hunters who went missing in national parks and around national parks that were very skilled at hunting, had been to these areas before. That's why it was strange. And then now, Missing 411, the UFO Connection, which goes into a realm that I quite enjoy. So, as we were talking before, the Missing 411 documentaries, the best thing about them, I think, is how they are done. David is really great at presenting us with a bunch of information about a case, a lot of theories that he and others that he has spoken to have thought up about different aspects of each case, and questions whether or not there could be something going on. He's not getting on there and saying aliens are definitely abducting German people and elk in our national parks. Like, exactly. Which even if he did, I'd be like, tell me more.
I know. I believe you.
Yeah. 100%. I believe whatever you're saying. No, but he's basically saying, I can't find an explanation for this. What do you think? And I think that that's kind of the way to do a documentary on anything involving something you believe to be paranormal or supernatural in nature. Like, you're lying if you say that you know what's going on. And I'm not going to believe anyone on that particular point unless Oso himself comes to get me. Like if Oso comes down
1000% and he's Oso like face to face with me chatting, then
eat these floaty pills. I'll be like, all right, well, it's real.
All right, it was true. And there's the elk hanging out on the ship, so I gotta go.
For anyone who hasn't seen a Missing 411 documentary, when it comes to a Missing 411 case, it's not just a missing person. These cases that the films and the books are about, there's a collection of profile points, is what David calls them, that the cases have to have in order to qualify to be Missing 411. And in this documentary, David focuses on 4 of those profile points. And those 4 points are no scent trail, which means scent dogs are brought into the area where the person was last seen, and they cannot find a trail anywhere in the area. Weather-related issues is number 2. Right as people disappear or right after they are missing, a weather event happens that inhibits searchers' ability to go find the individual. Number 3 is they go missing near water. And number 4 is that if the victim is found, they're almost always found in an area that's been previously searched. And I'm talking like 5 to 8 times, not like we looked once, like it's been searched thoroughly, scent dogs, people, nothing was found.
Large groups of people.
And all of a sudden a body shows up there. So I wanted to break down these profile points, and I want to hear your thoughts on the Missing 411 profile points. So anything that sticks out to you, whether it's a case they covered, how you feel about the profile points. Let's talk about no scent trail first. What do you think about that phenomenon?
The no scent trail is wild to me, especially when someone goes missing and every once in a while sometimes they vanish without a trace. They vanish out of thin air and nothing's even found, none of their belongings. But every once in a while, there's like one belonging found, like a shirt. Or with the hunters, there's a lot of hunters who get lost out there. Their rifle will be left behind, which is also terrifying when you find that, because it's like they were out here to hunt. They wouldn't go anywhere without it. But an object of theirs, a belonging, will be found. And so, they're handing that to the dogs. They're saying, okay, we have a clue. We have something, scent trail. They were clearly in this area. And then there's just nothing. They're not picked up on anything. Like none, not along the regular path, nowhere near like where they were hunting. If somebody knows their exact location,
should be something.
How does the scent just vanish? There should be something, especially when their shirt is right there. It's like, how is it picking up nothing? So that kind of gives me the willies, just to think that like they get erased a little bit.
No scent is actually probably one of the most compelling pieces for me when it comes to strangeness factor, because the dogs don't have an agenda. They don't give a fuck about your documentary or whether or not the case is weird. Like, they're just there to sniff away. That's their job. And I even looked up I wanted to see like how accurate are scent dogs? Like, is it actually weird? Because there are times in the documentary where he asks, you know, is it weird that the dogs didn't pick up a scent? And these people say it's extremely weird that dogs didn't pick up a scent. And
it's like for one job.
They're bred to smell. And I looked up some stats because I was like, how are scent dogs on it? They're on it. Okay. They're on it. They're in charge. Bloodhounds can follow a trail for over 130 miles. They can retain the smell for 300 hours. Basset hounds have 220 million scent receptors. Beagles can hold scent molecules for days and follow a smell for miles in the air and on the ground. German shepherds can pick up a scent that is 40 feet underground or in 80 feet of water. So when a scent just up and disappears, to me, it's an indication of something happening. Like
1,000%.
It's just too weird. And I think it's strange no matter how you slice it, but I did also find one of the biggest factors to inhibit a dog's ability to track scent leads us to our next profile point, and that's weather. Precipitation is the most significant factor in throwing a dog off a scent. However, the dog will still have the scent. Like, it's just going to be harder to track where it went. So that almost doesn't even apply here because they don't even pick up a scent. It's not like, oh, they lost the scent, they can't follow it anywhere. It's like gone. Like your scent is not there.
It just doesn't exist, which so you can't even blame it on that really at all.
But that leads us to the second profile point, weather-related issues. Here's the thing. The only issue I have with this one is that when it's present in a case that's presented to me, I'm never told whether or not the bad weather was in the forecast. And it's one thing if there's a freak snowstorm or it's pouring rain out of nowhere, and then it's another thing if the snow was in the forecast and then it snowed.
Right. Yes. I agree. And we aren't ever told that. So it's like, we don't know is this weird or no, we knew it was going to snow.
Yeah. So did the weatherman say it was going to snow and then it snowed? Because then that's not a phenomenon. That's
right. That can't be that crazy. But then the really weird part is again, it comes to the hunters. And I feel like one of the spouses, or maybe it was a girlfriend, was saying in her interview, like, he never would have gone out knowing that snow or sleet or rain was on the horizon. It was one of those situations where he went missing, and then like just a few hours later, really horrific weather picked up, and she was so struck by it, saying he never would have done that. So when those things happen, I guess that makes it a little more strange.
Woodsman, like, I don't fucking know. I wouldn't know.
I have no clue. I wouldn't check the weather.
I'd die out there for sure, aliens or not.
Definitely.
But when it's experienced people.
Yeah, and actually, she just kept like drilling that point home. Like, he would never have gone out if that weather was coming.
That's true. I do remember that one. I just feel like I did want more of what was the forecast supposed to be? What did the weatherman say was going to happen? What was in the forecast before you say like, and then a snowstorm hit? It's like, okay, well, was there supposed to be a snowstorm? Was it supposed to rain? Because that's two different things. So I don't know. Like, tell me what the forecast
to be.
Yeah. And then I'll tell you if it's weird. But actually, this was posted in the Missing 411 Reddit community. People were talking about the current events and the Mount Baldy missing people just recently. Actor Julian Sands went missing while hiking Mount Baldy in California. And the search was halted when inclement weather rolled in the following day. And another man went missing there a few days later, both men in their 60s. But when you look into it, weather had been bad in the area for a minute. And people who live in the area literally talked about how they had planned to hike on the same day as Julian and decided there's no way they're going up there due to weather conditions. So yeah, you kind of need you need all of the details to form an accurate opinion.
That information. Totally.
So I know. That's my only.
That one is a little more.
Yeah, that's my only issue. And with the third profile point, I do think it's interesting, but same situation, missing near water. To me, this one's never really been that mysterious simply because of drowning. Like, it's so freaking easy to drown. Yeah. People drown in a cup. Like, people drown in a tub. So going missing.
You can drown so easily. Yeah.
It doesn't blow my mind. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know about that one.
Yeah. And even when it comes to, people missing in general, when you find out water is involved, it's like, okay, well, there's a good chance they got, pulled down a creek or a river or they
Yeah.
drowned, then I'm just kind of like, yeah, that checks out. They're missing and water was nearby. Like, okay.
Yeah, that might be
That's where
my
things
least favorite
happen.
one.
That's dangerous. Yeah, totally.
To be fair, there are a lot of these cases, and a lot of them do take place right next to water. So maybe you just have to throw that in because it is present in so many of them, but I just don't think it's a super compelling piece of information.
No. Of the strangeness, it's not the one that blows you away. But also, I mean, the water thing is weird just because we talk about this all the time, that things happen near bodies of water all the damn time that we can't explain, that are so bizarre. It's like, at the end of the day, it all comes down to water, apparently.
Yeah, what's going on
That's
in there?
where the strange and bizarre shall occur.
The final profile point. Victims found in a place that's already been searched thoroughly. Hachimachi. This one really creeps me out.
I hate it.
I don't like
I was
this
like,
one.
this is the one that hits me the most. I feel like in almost every story where someone was found, or when clues or some of their belongings were found, it was an area that had been so thoroughly searched already. And I just don't understand. I can't think about it for too long.
Especially when it's the victim. Like if it's their notepad, okay. If it's their gun, all right. But when it's the victim itself, it's like bodies start smelling within hours.
Right.
Okay. So like not only did you walk right past or right over a literal human body, no one smelled it. The dogs didn't smell it. It's kind of compelling to me. I find it very strange.
It's so bizarre, and it kind of goes with no scent trail that you were saying. That one is the one that freaks you out. Like the two of those hit me the hardest because it's like you searched the area, you had the dogs on the area, so that goes hand in hand, and then suddenly body, and it's I don't how where was it?
Where was the body? Yeah, I mean, I would be almost completely useless in a group search of the woods. I'm not good at hiking. My eyesight's terrible. I get distracted. Like, basically, don't call me if someone goes missing. But you've got people who are trained at searching these areas, dogs who are trained to not only smell for this particular person, but are also trained to alert to decaying organic material. Like, that one does not make sense to me. And there are a lot of missing 411 cases. There's like 3 cases. It's like they're found in a place that's been searched a million fucking times. They're found in a place that's so far away from the last place they were seen. No one knows how they got there and how like no dog was able to track that scent, or they're not found at all, which is probably the worst one.
Ugh, the worst and, most mysterious. But, well, actually, maybe not most mysterious, because then that kind of opens your eyes up to, oh, well, all of these things could have happened if they just vanished out of thin air. But I think the one that is is when they are found, or all of their belongings are found way far away. That one that you just mentioned, like when it's like it's this place they've never gone. It's like almost 300 miles away from where they were hunting. Like all of the things that don't add up to their hunting experience or their hiking experience. Like why was there stuff up there? Why was their body up there? What is going?
Especially you have to stress like experienced hunters who sometimes it's like we go to the same camping spot or hunting area every year, and it's like, so even if they were in a situation, they would know to stay in one spot. They would know how to deal with that situation. So so those are the 4 profile points. Some of them are compelling, some not so much, but every missing 411 case, or close to every missing 411 case, has those 4 elements. When it comes to the documentary on a technical level, I love that all 3 of these documentaries, they have the same structure and the same technical aspects as the previous documentaries. It's almost, it feels like a continuation of a series. The same fonts are used, the same story structure. I just think it's nice. It's like familiar,
it's so cohesive, it's
comfortable, cohesive. It's a structure that works. It's a real if it ain't broke, don't fix it moment. Like
totally.
I do feel like too many people try and one up the last thing they did, whether it was the last movie, last season, last whatever, and what they end up doing is kind of taking away whatever made the first thing work. So I appreciate that if I were to walk in a room and watch 3 minutes, I would have to be like, is this The Hunted or UFO Connection? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't right away know which documentary it was. And I actually like that.
Because they're all set up the same. I do
Yeah.
too. And I like that it just feels like this continuation. Like, okay, we had to wait a little while, but now it's just the next chapter. And I
Yeah.
know what I'm getting myself into. And the storytelling structure is so good. It's such a beautiful thing that it's like, why would you change it? But again, people make that mistake all the time. So I'm so
Yes, they
happy
do.
they have stuck with what works. I love the way, the stories can blend together and they can stop one story and say, interesting, at this same location, this other
This
family
happened.
experienced this. And it's yes. And it's like, okay, we're putting the pieces together. And again, it's just presenting all the
Yeah.
strange similarities we can't
Giving us a
explain and
map,
putting the
showing
story
us
out there.
on a map, like how close things
Love the
are.
maps.
Love the
Yeah.
maps. Love a good map. I actually have to look something up real quick because I believe, and this is something I just saw like on a Reddit forum, because Reddit has a I don't know how you guys, if you watch or if you visit Reddit, but they have essentially like communities. So the missing 411 community, you can join that community, you can comment on posts, people post cases like, would this count as a missing 411 case, updates to cases.
Right.
It's pretty cool. But I saw someone
Mhm.
say on there that this one was directed by David himself, whereas the other ones were not. And I just want
I didn't
to,
realize that the other ones were not, because I did see he directed this one, and I remember thinking like, oh, how cool he's been directing these.
yeah. So Michael DeGrazier directed
Mhm.
the first one. Michael DeGrazier directed the second one, and David directed the third one. So this one is actually directed by David Paulides. So good for
Okay.
him then,
I
for
know.
having the wherewithal to keep that structure and just like do it again and not be like this. Well,
Right.
now I'm in
He could
charge, I
have
could do
changed
what I
it.
want. He absolutely could have
Right.
changed it and it would have been a different thing.
Right.
So I
But he
appreciate
didn't.
that.
He knew what worked. I do. Yeah. I appreciate that about him.
So the other thing
No.
that I love about the missing 411 documentaries, especially this one, I love how it used reenactments, because I am a firm believer that you use reenactments to get a vibe, set the scene, give us an atmosphere. Don't use reenactments to literally reenact what people are doing in a situation, because you are not going to have an Oscar award winning performance. Okay. You don't
Right.
have the budget. I know that. So, like,
we're not expecting that, honey. It's okay.
no. So, like, let the words of the story permeate my body. Give me sweeping landscapes and a close up of someone's like lit lantern, and I'm good.
Going to say the over the shoulder looks where they're, peering off into the woods. They see a light, something's coming down. Oh, we see the
Keep
shadow
it
of an
simple,
elk.
stupid. And they
That's
do.
what I and they do. It really is good. It is so well done. Oh
I
my
think it's
gosh.
so
Everything
well
about
done.
this is so good.
I think that the reenactment portion of these documentaries and the interview portion as well, I think that those are so well done that when it comes to the renderings of the craft, which are very obviously not like expert level, you can almost like totally forgive it.
Yeah. It didn't even hit me in any way. Normally I
Didn't
would
really
say,
bother
oh
me.
my gosh, that is a terrible graphic. Like why this just made this cheesy. I'm taken out of it. It didn't affect me in the slightest because of the way the rest of the documentary went. And it was like, yeah, that ship craft, whatever it may be, does look kind of bizarre. But it totally worked because it was just kind of showing the movement that we needed to see.
The
Then it's kind of
size,
just
the
peering over
scale.
somebody's shoulder.
Yeah.
The size, yes. And then all along the way, there's the maps woven into the story too that Ashley and I were mentioning. And it's just so helpful to see, like, okay, this is where they started. Maybe this is where they ended up. Here is another location where something strange happened. And if they had just been talking about it, I would be like, should I think that's strange?
Is
but
that
instead,
weird?
they could show me here's exactly where
sometimes when they say like even measurements, like units of measurements of space, I'm like, I don't know. It's almost like when when my dad, I'll be like, Dad, I need directions. He's like, well, just head north. And I'm like, you don't understand. Don't do that
when
to
anyone
me.
tells me to head north. Do not just say, do I turn left or do I turn right? Because I'm an idiot. So thank you.
Yeah, head east. You head east. Fuck you. I'm not.
You head east yet.
What do I have, a compass? Get out of here.
I know.
My all-time favorite part of this Missing 411 documentary is, and we already sort of covered it, but the interviewees were so incredibly genuine. I was so compelled by all of their stories, and I believed them. Like,
I did
and
too.
it's one of those situations where, like, now I don't know if a real spaceship came down and hovered over these two guys. I don't know if a UFO came down and picked up an elk and flew off with it in front of this group of men. But what I do know is that that's what they believed happened.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
And
and I believe them because of the way that they spoke in the interview. It was so sincere. I totally believe that they saw something.
They witnessed something. And that's something that we've talked about on the show a lot. Like, I don't know if alien abductions are taking place, but I know that there are abductees who believed that's what happened to them. It's a phenomenon in some capacity, and I think it deserves attention. Whether it's just a weird phenomenon that just the human race has for some reason, that these memories are almost implanted. One, why? Two, what is it? Is it a trauma response? Three, is it a mental illness? Like, what is it? It does deserve some attention.
Right. Because they are feeling fear in some ways. So we need to talk about it and figure out what is going on. I'm thinking of one of the stories without trying to tiptoe around the spoilers, but where I don't think it even resulted in anything that was too traumatizing or hard to swallow, but it was more just a story of what a group of hunters experienced when they went out together. They all saw something that just changed them for the rest of their lives. And when all of them are being interviewed and telling the story, they're all very visibly shaken. And this is years after, as they're talking about in the interview. And I think one of the men even said, like, I will never go back to that spot to hunt ever again. And it's like, why? Like, you don't want to just try again? What if you see something? It's like, I will never go back there. So whatever happened, whatever you want to believe, they had this eye-opening, forever changing, crazy experience that they can't explain. And I was just so fascinated watching these interviews. Like, wow, that is true terror. And they are, again, experienced hunters who would go to this spot all the time, and now they will never go there again because of what they saw.
I thought it would be cool during this episode if we each sort of took a case from the documentary and expanded on it in some way. So Lauren, why don't you go first?
So, I mean, every story, again, had me fully wrapped up in it, but there was one that really stood out to me. And then when I did a little outside research outside of the documentary, I actually found a little update on this too. So I will go into that, and Ashley, you can do with it what you will.
Yeah. But, and you also have to remind me which person this is.
Mark Strittmatter. Again, just a little overview. Mark Strittmatter is the name of the person who went missing. It was in 2019 in Wyoming, and he was an elk hunter, a very experienced elk hunter. It was not, besides the storm incident, it was not weird for him to go out hunting, a very normal thing. He was acting totally normal right before he went out, but he was vanished. Nothing was really found on him. It was October 19th, 2019. And then his disappearance, like over the next year, I guess, was like taking over. It was not just obviously the family and the search team, but like Wyoming was just losing their mind in general over this and really wanted to understand what was happening. He was 44 years old at the time. He was in Medicine Bow. That's what I was trying to remember the name I had in my notes. Medicine Bow, which is mentioned.
My story is from Medicine Bow as well.
That was the connection. So, search and rescue teams were going crazy. They found nothing, but then also were hampered by the heavy snow. So then it was like no scent trail, no finding of belongings, whatever. But then just in 2022, so I was telling Ashley, end of last year, it was October 2022, so pretty much exactly 3 years later, another search party went out and found remains 325 yards from where the initial search had taken place. And this area definitely had been searched before, so it's one of the profile points, but it probably wasn't searched as often. I mean, it was totally looked at, I want to say that, but it wasn't looked at as often because it was so far away from where he was and where they knew his whereabouts had been. But found some remains, found some personal belongings, 325 yards away. And then it took them a long time after they found the remains, I guess, until they said was definitely his body because, I mean, so much had happened with the weather and everything, and they didn't want to get anybody's hopes up because obviously this is a huge closure moment 3 years later. So I think it still took a long time until they were able to positively ID it as Mark Strittmatter's remains. So this just was found at the end of last year.
Man.
And at all we knew from the documentary was that he had kind of vanished without a trace. So yeah. Oh no, not without a trace. In 2020, his binoculars were found. That was one thing. And then they had the canine unit out there, and I guess the canine unit sniffed out other items, but they didn't believe that they belonged to Mark. So that could have been connected to a totally different thing, but they were like in his area. So it was all very strange, is basically what you can take away from it. But 2022, it was positively ID'd as Mark. So we do know that he passed away. Why were his remains found so far away? Why were they not found until 3 years later?
Yeah.
That we will never know, probably. But.
And remains being found far away, I guess not super crazy. I mean, an animal could have drugged the body from a different place. Like, we don't know exactly where he was headed because he was the one who told his girlfriend he was done for the day and was on his way back, right? And
then his car was just like abandoned on the side of the road.
And like wasn't even like pulled super far off of the side of the road. So it seems like he was
kind of just gotten out and ran.
Yeah, got out of the car and ran, which makes you go like, what the fuck? I mean, maybe he saw an elk that he wanted to go out. I don't know.
Right.
And I don't know the headspace of an elk hunter. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how important that would be to them. I don't know if they called it for the day and decided to go home. If they saw one, if they would pull over and try again. Like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how dedicated he was because it sounded like, okay, I'm done. I'm coming back. Like it seems strange.
Or if he saw something
pull over and just abandon.
Yeah. If he saw something strange that wasn't an elk that he got out to investigate.
Which absolutely could be. But a lot of his, I believe, the rifle was not left in the car because they ended up finding that later. But like his cigarettes, his phone.
That was it. Because Joe and I were like, there's no fucking way he would leave without a cigarette.
No. Yes, exactly. Like all of his things that the girlfriend said were in his pocket always, never taken out, were left in the car. So that was a big red flag for the girlfriend, for everybody, where it was like, this doesn't make sense. And poorly pulled over car, the snowstorm happening that you don't think he would risk get back out of his car, knowing the bad weather's coming, all of it is so bizarre. And that the belongings weren't found until a year later in that area, and then the remains 2 years after that. It's all so strange.
One. The one thing I wanted to touch on today, so the missing 411 documentaries, especially, I don't remember quite so well the first one, but the Hunted and UFO Connection, they do contain other stories that take place in these same areas that don't necessarily have to do with a missing person.
Right.
Which I really like, because it's almost offering a what if this is what happened to this person, because it happened to another person here who's here to tell the tale. So
who lived to tell the tale.
Exactly.
Came back home.
So the one
what I was
case
getting at with that interview where the guys, well, I know your case is really wild that you're about to get into, but even the guys who were just like, we were camping and then we're never going there again. Like, I enjoyed hearing that story because they came back and could tell us.
Yeah, because maybe they couldn't have come back. Maybe there have been instances where people have experienced the same thing they did that they didn't come back from for whatever reason.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, the one case I wanted to touch on today that's covered in the UFO Connection is that of Carl Higdon. I thought he and his wife's testimony in the documentary was extremely compelling. They both were very genuine, both very confused. Still to this day.
Very.
And very like, here's what happened, believe me or don't, I can only tell you what I experienced, which I appreciate. But the short version, and I highly recommend, again, you rent or buy this documentary so you can hear the full story from the people it happened to. But the short version is that one day in 1974, Carl Higdon was elk hunting alone in the Medicine Bow National Forest in Wyoming. And at one point he came across a group of elk that didn't even move, didn't pay any attention to him at all, simply still standing in this field.
That
so
freaked me
Carl,
out. Just perfectly still vision. Ugh.
what is this, a horror movie? What are you talking about? So
yeah,
Carl, an elk hunter, decides, well, I'm gonna shoot one. Sorry if you're dazed, I'm still gonna shoot you. So he went to shoot one, and he said his bullet stopped in midair and fell to the ground as if it had hit a wall. He then heard the snapping of twigs, and when he looked, he saw a man, kind of. The man called himself Oso, which is the joke I told earlier that no one got unless they watched the documentary. And Oso asked Higdon if he was hungry. Higdon said he was, and Oso tossed him 4 pills, and he took one, which he explained later. And I don't remember if he explained this in the doc or if I read this afterwards, because I read all the reports from when this happened. He said later that he thought it was really strange of him to take the pill, because usually he doesn't even like to take aspirin. He didn't drink. He didn't do drugs. Why would he take a random pill from a weirdo in the woods? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I would, but I do stuff like that.
But I'm a fool. Yeah.
But I'm an
trying
idiot.
to have a good time. Yeah, right.
Here for a good time, not a long time.
Exactly.
But it was weird for him. And but he did. And Oso asked if he'd like to come with him. And even though he said, I don't know why I agreed, he did. He went with Oso. Some other stuff happened. Watch the doc. Oso did take him somewhere that he didn't understand, but said he didn't think it was Earth. And his body was scanned by Oso and his buds, and he was told he wasn't what they needed, and he was brought back to the woods. Now, there was actually a really interesting part to Carl's story that I'm surprised the documentary didn't mention at all. And maybe they did. I watched it twice and I didn't catch it. So maybe they did, but I don't think they did. So when Carl was, dropped off or came to whatever in the woods, he was very confused as to who he was and where he was. He even walked right past his own pickup truck, not recognizing it, not realizing it was his truck. And he walked like a mile or so and decided to turn back towards the truck because he eventually remembered, oh, that's my truck. Like, oh, I'll just go back to my truck. So he goes back to the truck. And when he got back, he heard a woman's voice, and it kind of clicked with him like, oh, CB radio. I have a radio. So he gets in. He calls for help. Told him, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. He was able to give enough information to get an idea of where to look for him. So authorities found him at 11:30 p.m. that night. His wife was with them. He was reportedly still dazed and confused and didn't quite recognize his wife even. And he just kept repeating, they took my elk, they took my elk. And this is what was creepy. The search party had a considerably difficult time getting his 2-wheel drive truck out of where he was found because it literally couldn't navigate the path. So if it couldn't drive out, how did it drive in?
How did he get there?
They ended up having to tow his truck out because it was in an area and it was 2-wheel drive. There was like no way he could have gotten his truck where it was.
How though?
Which is crazy. Had to be towed. The bullet, they found the bullet. They went back. They found the bullet. It was examined. And despite being a bullet shot from a gun that had the potential to shoot through a telephone pole, it was completely mangled, and the only explanation is that it struck something very hard with great force, which lends credibility to his story. Yeah, of shooting the gun.
Yeah.
Which I suppose he could have shot a rock and made it up. But no one found the rock with a bullet piece missing. But Carl claims the extraterrestrials decided to bring him back home because after scanning his body, they decided he wasn't what they needed. And he never understood that, but he had assumed that it was because he had had a vasectomy. For one, am not a fan of that theory because I think if they have the technology that can scan our bodies, potentially even heal our bodies, and they have force fields and invisible ships, they can probably reverse vasectomy.
A vasectomy, yeah. I think they have the tools, they have the smarts. I think they could figure that out. I agree. But it was so interesting because he was so, I know that he didn't fully know why they let him go, but he's
thought about it
pretty, yeah, he's
definitely molded over
about that theory. Yeah, he kept saying it over and over. He's like, this has to be why. And so I do just wonder what made him think that, because I agree with you. I'm sort of like, I don't know that that's gonna be like the end all be all for these alien folk. But
Yeah.
he seemed certain in a way that was like, I wonder if maybe it's back in his subconscious now and he couldn't exactly remember what happened. But I'm like, I wonder if he saw something, was told something. I don't know. I'm very
Yeah.
curious.
I'm not sure what he's thinking about the vasectomy. I mean, it's not an uncommon thing. Barney
Right.
Hill and Betty Hill, Barney
Right.
especially. I mean, Barney said embarrassingly he couldn't really touch his own privates for a while
Mm-hmm.
because he
Yeah.
felt violated. And so, I mean, maybe that one's real
Yeah.
deep in there. Some memories real deep in there. But yeah, that's what he thought.
Totally.
I don't necessarily
Right.
think that's it, but who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know Oso. Like I said, till he
Yeah.
comes
I
down
do not know Oso personally. I can't
and has a
ask him, so I'm
conversation with
not really
me.
sure.
That's just a theory Carl had about what happened to him. And this documentary throws out a lot of theories, some new, some old. Let's discuss some of the news theories that were introduced and how we feel
Gosh.
about them. And because I want to end this episode on a high note, I'm going to start with the theories that I say we like least, but we have not talked about this. I like least, and end with the theories I assume we may like most. So, new theories that were introduced in this documentary and how we feel about them. Aquifer. How do you feel about the aquifer theory?
Oh, like the underground water
Yeah.
situation. Um, I mean, I like it and hate it because I feel like, I mean, aquifers are a thing and we depend on them for the water, and we're either polluting them or we're using them. And I wasn't there a story, am I making this up, was it this documentary, or wasn't there a story that said somebody was told by an alien to build a well over a
Yeah.
certain
In
area, and
an
that's the only
area
reason they
that like
stayed protected?
it shouldn't even be possible for a well to be dug and he was able to
Right.
and he hit water.
He
I
hit
guess you
water
know
and
what I
then
should do? The aquifer theory before we like get into it. David throws in a theory about extraterrestrials potentially traveling through or using aquifers in some way, and he
yes.
bases this on the location of the cases he discusses in this and how they're all
Mm-hmm.
just outside of the United States' biggest aquifer, which is the Ogallala Aquifer.
Yes. And so that's the part of it that I kind of like, because we've talked about this on an episode before, where what if there are crafts or alien beings or something extraterrestrial that is like in the water lying dormant, and that is their
Mm-hmm.
entry point and
Yeah,
exit point, and that is
into our
why these
dimension or whatever.
crafts, yes, that's why the crafts are appearing around them. So in that sense, I am kind of into the theory and get excited about it, but I don't know, it didn't seem, it wasn't the strongest
Mm-mm.
one to me of all the things. So I
Well,
was a
and
little like,
I was watching it and I remember being like, maybe I just don't know what an aquifer is. But I researched it just to make sure. I mean,
yeah,
the way that he was talking about aquifers in the documentary kind of made me think like I kind of forgot what an aquifer is. Like it made it seem
mm,
like they were like big lakes or rivers underground, but
right,
it's water moving through sedimentary rocks, so like filtering through
right,
rocks and stuff. So unless it's like a
yeah,
Miss Frizzle magic school bus type situation where the craft like
yes,
shrinks down and goes through, which I'm all about, like great, cool,
here for it.
but this one just didn't really bite for me in this documentary. I was kind of
Yeah,
underwhelmed by this theory. Maybe if
because
he
it's
had
not like
shown us
an ocean is there. Like
exactly.
it sounds more like it's a little stream.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. And maybe if he had showed a map of more missing cases that that weren't necessarily talked about in this doc, but that he's researched before, that might have given us an idea of like how many took place surrounding, but not on top of the aquifer.
Right.
Maybe that would have been more compelling. I
Yeah.
that was pretty lackluster for me, the aquifer theory.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we do agree where I was kind of like, it's like I tried
Okay.
to find the fun in it again by saying
Yeah.
like maybe the water is an entry
Sure.
point. Let's keep running with it. But yeah, to say that an aquifer is like proving that, I'm like, well, no,
Yeah, I don't know about
not
that.
necessarily. I don't like that.
Another
Yeah.
theory introduced in Missing 411, the UFO Connection, is the German heritage. This one's pretty simple. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
kind of just thrown in at the end of the documentary, but a
It
lot of
is.
people that are mentioned in this doc are of German heritage.
I thought that was interesting because I they did throw it in at the end of like, hey, did you notice all of them were German? I only noticed I think the last two because I was just paying more attention, but I was like, oh, interesting that he said they were both German elk hunters. But then at the end it was like, hey, lots of these guys are German elk hunters. I was like, well, do I
Huh.
need to think about that more? Like why
Yeah.
is that a thing? Is it just coincidence? I don't know. It's
I
kind of weird.
mean, well, here's the thing. German ancestry is probably the most common ancestry of white people in America.
Exactly. So then you can
So
dismiss it. I have German ancestry,
there's
so
that.
yeah.
So I don't know, but
Yes.
it is a theory, not just in Missing 411. The idea that these beings, whatever they are, follow generations from one family, that theory's been around
Yeah.
for a long time. And judging by the amount of people who like witness UFOs and have encounters, as well as their parents or as well as their
Mhm.
children or grandparents, like there could be something there. And if there's something to that, then I don't see why
Right.
it would be crazy to think that they also follow individuals of a certain genetic background.
Right. Like we're looking for this bloodline for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't know what it is, but yeah. It
I
was
just
just I mean,
wouldn't.
it was an interesting note.
Yeah, it was an interesting note. I just wouldn't say it was like super compelling in the context of this documentary. Like, I didn't think enough evidence
Sure.
was brought forward to make me care about the German
No.
thing. I did
Yes,
find a
agreed.
really funny Reddit comment on this one from
Oh
Reddit
gosh.
user Little Pink Dot on the Missing 411 page when asked, "What's the deal with German ancestry?" Little Pink Dot said, "Nothing. Germans just like remote hiking. No matter how far or how high you hike to the top of a mountain, when you get to the top, there's a German guy there." And of course, all the Ricola jokes rolled in. Reddit's a fun place.
Ricola. That actually is so good. I love that. Reddit is such a fun place. I
Yeah.
love it.
So German
Oh, that's
heritage.
solid.
I don't
Mm,
know.
mm, mm.
Another theory that this documentary proposed was that these beings are using Earth for a food source. There are many cases in this
Yes.
documentary that indicate that these beings were using our national forests to abduct elk. There's a
Hmm.
case in which a group of men witness a craft come down and literally pick one up. And there's a case in which a man was in what he thought to be a ship or a craft, and he saw there were elk in the ship as well. So,
Yeah.
I fucking love
Like
this
elk
theory.
monitoring. Yeah. I it's again thinking outside the box. That's
Well,
what
it's
I said
so
at the beginning
simple.
of this.
It's
It
so
is, but
simple.
I
And it was like, why have
why
I
have I
never
never
thought of
thought of
that
this
before?
ever? I know that's why it's like it's thinking outside the box, but it's also the most logical. But I needed to
Yeah,
see this documentary to understand it. Like, oh, elk hunters. It wasn't necessarily about the hunters. It was about
it
the
was about the
elk
food
to
source.
feed.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, a lot of it was talking about like, oh, they're probably doing elk monitoring. That's why sometimes you just like might see them pass by and, feel a strange energy, or maybe they're picking some human up by mistake and they're like, tell us where the elk are. I don't know. But it all seemed so interesting. It's like, yes, that a
Yeah.
lot of
This makes
sense for
fucking sense.
everything we just heard.
It's
Yeah.
the most simple theory I've ever heard regarding aliens and why they would come to Earth. I legitimately kicked
They're
myself for
hungry.
not thinking of it sooner. Like, never even occurred to me. And it would
No.
explain so much. It would explain one,
Mm-hmm.
why UFO encounters are usually over sources of water or in wooded areas. That's where you fish and hunt. That's where we fish and hunt,
Right.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about UFO
Yep.
experiences like I saw something weird in the sky once. I'm talking about like I saw a craft land and
Yes.
witnessed whatever, like that, a close encounter, if you will, more so than a UFO sighting.
Yeah.
Close encounters all take place in the middle of the fucking woods.
They're
So
looking for some creatures, some animals, some
so
fish in the water.
it would explain why these close encounters take place where they do. It explains why they would consistently spread a message to take care of our planet, because it's a food source to them. Which would explain why they don't want us to use nuclear weapons. If you listen to our show, we have talked about it before. You know that there have been multiple instances where nuclear facilities have had strange encounters with unidentified objects that have shut down their equipment. This would also explain cattle mutilations.
Yep. Oh my gosh, yes.
It would also explain why they wouldn't want to make themselves known to us on a grand scale. Because if you think about it, if you really think about it, if they were finally like, yeah, we're real, we're here, but don't worry, we don't want to hurt you. We come down here sometimes to get food. The first fucking thing we would do after we got done freaking out is be like, wait a minute. You can't take our fish.
We're not sharing.
Take our elk. You can't take our cows. Yeah. And like, we would basically be like, time for some tradesies, gray man. Like, give us a cure for cancer and maybe you can have some elk. But
there would be some bartering involved.
Yeah, and it's just fucking easier to not deal with it. Like, sneak in, take shit. We're too dumb and too disorganized to stop you. We don't even know what's going on. It just makes so much sense to me now.
I know. It all adds up, truly. And even like in this documentary, and I think in the other ones, when we're looking at the maps and when David is kind of showing us what's strange about these areas, almost always there is some sort of triangle shape. And I mean, just in general, with paranormal happenings, with strange happenings, it comes down to this triangular shape. And to me, that feels like also that this is all connected as well, because if elk monitoring or, looking at food above, I would think they would kind of triangulate, like the way they're using their GPS and their maps, if we're believing they're up in a craft. Maybe they have their GPS connected to their ship. I would think they would have these like little areas, like they might have a little triangular zone.
This is my triangle.
Like, we hit these areas. Yes. You get that areas. Triangle. You're over there, I'm over here, and there are these nice little pointed out areas where I can say that there's going to be some elk, or that's where there has been elk. We're going to favor these areas. So I feel like that could be their way of finding their food source. So I also liked the little triangle that went along with it, and it felt like a brilliant being was behind it.
Yeah, I'm basically fully a believer that they're here to get delicacies for fancy alien restaurants now, and I don't think you can ever convince me otherwise. What were you going to say?
There's some good elk restaurants up there for sure. Oh, I was going to say also, maybe it's just because I watched it again for the second time kind of recently, but I don't know how the movie Nope didn't give me more of this too, because I felt like that also kind of alluded to that as well, where it was like, I'm here, I'm hungry, I'm gonna pick this up. I feel like it kind of has the same vibes.
Yeah, it has the same vibe. Question for you.
Yes.
So in the documentary, David talks about chronic wasting disease, which is a disease that's affecting the United States deer, elk, reindeer, moose, hooved woodland creatures, basically. And it's a neurological disease that's transmissible, that seems to just kind of like slowly cause them to waste away. And as far as we can tell, it's not something that can be passed along to human beings, but hunters are warned that if they kill an animal that clearly has CWD, maybe don't eat it. So my question though is, and he was talking about it in the document, was he attributing that to aliens? Or like, why was that a part of the documentary?
You see, folks, I'm so happy you brought that up. I actually had it in my notes. I was like, what's the connection to chronic wasting disease? Because I felt like he made sure to focus on it and make a point about it, of like, oh, this elk, where this sighting happened, had chronic wasting disease when it was found. And it's like, okay, so are you saying that's connected? That doesn't really add up with the other things.
Well, it doesn't really add up with the theory that it's a food source, because then they wouldn't do that to the animals.
yeah, they wouldn't want to do that.
But I just
Was
don't
that
know.
when he was focusing on the elk that was found that had it, did he in any way allude to, I think this elk was one of the ones that might have been picked up and then was
Yeah.
found
Yeah, he
later?
said that they
Because I almost
did
wonder if they were like,
find.
oh, we can't eat this one. I don't know.
Mm.
They were like, oh, we got food. Oh, no,
Oh no,
this
it
one.
has a
And
disease
that's
and
why
they
it
put it
was,
down. You know what? That might be why he brought it up actually. Because he did
could be.
spend a little time on chronic wasting disease, but I
Yeah.
never
I was
it
like,
I remember being like, this is gonna come back, and then it didn't come back. So then I was like, so
it
why
did
did we
not.
talk about chronic wasting disease, which is a horrible thing that is happening in our
Awful.
national parks and Canada as well. And so
Right.
far we don't know what to do about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so it's worth bringing up just to have the knowledge, but yes,
Yeah.
it didn't track in the documentary unless that's what he meant by it. Like, oh, the reason this elk was returned was because of this. That could have been the hint.
Yeah, that could have been it.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought
Yeah.
it connected to more. But anyways,
Like I said, I wrote it down. Was like, maybe Ashley knows.
does she
I have
know?
no idea.
Do you have any other
She
were there
understand.
any other theories in this besides those? Those were my main ones
The
that I
only
took
other
away.
thing I was like added up with you, except for, but this could just be on me and that I haven't watched enough alien documentaries and you are more on it than me, which of course you are. But my other thing was it felt like it was brought up twice or maybe only once. And again, I could be mixing it up with a past missing 411, but the silence of the
Mm.
craft nearby, like when they saw a light, that there was just a complete deafening silence. I don't remember that ever being a part of abduction stories. I remember like the other things of like, oh, missing time, ending up in a different location, some of those things. But I don't ever remember people being like, I saw a bright light and then just silence. But I felt like that was focused on a little more with this. And I
I
didn't know if
think the
that
silence
was
is
memorable.
focused on in close encounter situations because if it was a craft that we have, like a plane
Like a
or a
military,
helicopter, a military craft, even
we'd
jets,
hear it.
you hear it. You hear them. They make sound.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, yeah, a lot of the UFO things where it's like it made no sound or there was a light
Yeah.
buzzing and that's all I heard. That's what's significant
Right.
because it's like so many times,
So
the
then what was
military will
that?
be like, well, it's just a jet. And it's like, well, I've heard a fucking
Yeah.
jet and they're loud as hell.
Right. And it was not this.
And
Yeah,
that's not
that's
what it
true.
was. Or like, oh, it was that I remember they tried to tell them and Phoenix with Phoenix Lights that it was helicopters. And they're like, well, I've heard a helicopter. Have you been in LA?
They're the
I heard eight
loudest
a
fucking things
night.
I've ever heard.
Like I'm not gonna
Yeah,
mistake the sound. It was
exactly.
so funny when we were watching this documentary too. There was that story we've referenced where the two men experienced the really large, low flying silent craft that was like floating
Mm-hmm.
right above them. And Joe made the joke. He was like, it's Saturn. Because that's always what they say. They're like, you just saw
Oh,
Saturn. And
well,
it's
it's
like,
definitely Saturn.
did I? Did I
That
see
is so true.
Saturn? A craft the size of a
I can't.
fucking parking lot going across the sky right above the tree
Definitely just
line.
Saturn.
It's
Everyone
probably
relax. Like,
Saturn.
no, no, no.
No,
Yeah, that's
listen.
hilarious. And it's not.
Well, then let's give our final thoughts aside from
I
watch
love
the doc.
yeah, I was gonna say I love these documentaries. I know we're being so repetitive at this point, but I think it's absolutely worth it to watch. This specific doc, as part of the series, the UFO Connection, was very interesting because again, it's
Mm-hmm.
a nice mix of strange sightings and disappearing cases. So it goes into a little bit of both. And is there a connection? Hence the word connection in the title. Like what is the connection in these areas where you either see something you can't explain or if sadly somebody from your life goes missing and you just don't have any clue what's
Yeah.
going on
Could
and
it
why these
be
areas.
related to an experience another person had
Right,
where
just
they
nearby.
disappeared for an afternoon,
Right, but then came back.
but then came back? Yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to the three docs, the fact that I had a lot of conflicting opinions on some of the theories that he presented in this one, I still think it might be my favorite one. and that comes down to the witnesses and the interviewees. I just really love the people that were in this documentary.
Me too.
Felt for them, and I thought they were funny, some of them, and I thought they were sweet. And I actually, we need to say rest in peace, by the way. Carl Higdon passed away shortly after filming his interview for this documentary. So
sweet man. And he was one of the best parts, like just a really good interview, and just watching him be sincere, but also, you know, those emotional moments that he had, remembering it, and just like, people can believe me or not, but this, like, I have thought about this for years. And I really liked him. The people,
I remember
really made it.
Hearing his name before seeing this documentary, and when he popped up and was like, or I don't even think he had popped up yet, it was like David had said something about Carl, you know, Carl Higdon, and I was like, oh, I remember Carl Higdon. And then like I got to see this interview with him, which I'm really grateful he was able to do the interview before he passed, because this man's been getting ridiculed his entire life because of what he remembers happening to him in the 70s. And I don't know. I hope he got answers. I hope that after he passed, Oso was there and was like, dude.
He welcomed him in the afterlife.
What's
like,
up?
I got you.
It wasn't about the vasectomy. What are you talking about?
You crazy man. Yeah,
I don't know.
I hope so.
I don't know if I believe all the cases, including in the 3 documentaries, can be attributed to something strange and or sinister going on in our national parks. But I do think that there are enough cases presented in the documentaries to make us question whether or not something strange and or sinister is happening in our national parks. Like, I don't think that necessarily, like, you know, because some people have the theory, David never presents it, at least he hasn't yet in any of his documentaries, but some people have the theory that the government has something to do with it, and that's why the national parks were created, and like that's why, you know, I don't know, I don't necessarily think there's a larger conspiracy at work, but I do believe in close encounters. I do believe when people say they've seen, heard, and experienced something they can't explain rationally. And I do also believe that the best place to have one of these experiences is probably the middle of fucking nowhere woods.
Yes, definitely the middle of nowhere. The desert, the woods. Yeah.
So whether or not you believe in like the national park aspect of this, Missing 411, I'm a fan. I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5 stars, probably.
I might say 4.5. I'm going to up you by half. I really, really enjoyed it, and already have been recommending it to people who are much more skeptical than me, and as they should be. I think a healthy skepticism is good. But I've been recommending it to people because it is so well done. I'm like, check out this series, especially this one that I just watched. Like,
keep an open mind.
It raises a lot of questions. Yeah.
Or don't.
I think it's good to keep an open mind. Or do whatever you want, honestly.
I think this documentary would be interesting even if you really didn't have an open mind. Just to hear people tell their stories. I don't know. It was really good. But you guys, you listeners, weirdos, you can watch Missing 411, the UFO Connection on Amazon Prime. You can rent it for $4.99, or you could buy it for $12.99, or you can watch Missing 411, The Hunted, I believe, on Hulu still for free. And that's my second favorite in the series. And I think
I love The Hunted.
I love that one. Especially you get to hear the Sierra sounds.
Woo!
Which scare the shit out of me.
Keeps me up at night.
The OG doc Missing 411 is only available for rent as well, but I think it's on Tubi for free with ads. So check out these docs.
Some commercials.
Let us know what you think. If you have any theories, share them. We want to hear about them. Comment.
Let us know.
Comment below the video.
Yeah, we're such typical YouTubers now. Comment down below. Hit that subscribe button.
The subscribe.
No, but truly, let us know.
You should though.
We love
subscribe
having a discussion.
And tell us
with us
what you think. But subscribe to our channel. We're going to be primarily on YouTube this year, so definitely hit that subscribe button, and you'll be alerted anytime we add new videos. If you like and comment below, give us your theories. It also helps us with that sweet, sweet algorithm. Ooh, delicious. That delicious algorithm. Follow us on social media at Keep It Weirdcast to keep up with upcoming episode topics, Tarot Tuesdays, Witchy Wednesdays, etc., etc. And if you like what we do and you want us to keep doing it, donate to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/keepitweirdpodcast, and you'll get a monthly newsletter and bonus episodes in return. But in the meantime, keep it scary, keep it creepy, keep it weird.
Also, I was doing something with my lips, rubbing them together, and I noticed I had like something was like shaking. I think I'm on Alex's Mac this time around because I'm using 2 different Macs. I think I have like a filter on.
Really?
You see that?
Oh,
yeah. It's up in here. Look at that. Is there like a makeup filter?
There might be. I will say I have not noticed it.
Okay, maybe I know it. That's the thing, is it this looks like my face, except when I every once in a while rub my lips, but I feel like I have to be transparent with our listeners and watchers. If something on my face you were here? Like, oh, how does Lauren's makeup just look so good? It's fake. It's a filter, apparently.
Filter.
Who knows?
Well, here's the thing.
I have a large zit. Anyway.